If you stack this game incorrectly on DraftKings, you could lose all your money. So make sure you roster these players instead.
Yeah, I'm real curious, too, to see the way fantasy football has gone this open, if it continues, if, like, the new thing is where they're just going to have to take this subset of quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, and just make those dudes, like, 9 to 10K because they've been such strong difference makers in weekly fantasy so far. And Jalen Hurts, you know, what he did last weekend has to scare everybody from, like, a league stance. Like, he was the QB2 in fantasy last week and had 2 rushing points. Like, he's starting to play in structure as a passer. And if you combine that with his rushing ability, like, woo, like
it's going to break some stuff.
Yeah, we're cooking with some things. I mean, the last 2 games, 10.7, 9.7 yards per pass attempt. Now, those did come against Minnesota and Washington. The Jaguars have played better defensively the past 2 weeks. But, I mean, how much of that was contributed to playing like Matt Ryan without Michael Pittman and playing Justin Herbert with the rib injury, no Keenan Allen, and like 2 guys hurt. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Jacksonville because they actually did what you would expect a good defense to do in those situations and just mush them. Like, neither of those teams did anything in those games. So this is like one of the tougher tests that Jalen Hurts has had objectively on his plate to start the season. And under pressure is kind of like the one area that like he still isn't really clicking. He's just 9 of 24 under pressure, 37% completion rate, 4.1 yards per attempt. None of his touchdown passes have come under pressure. Jacksonville is 11th in the league in pressure rate, so if they can get home, we're going to put some of that, you know, Jalen Hurts playing in structure to this point under the to the test. But right now, he's in a very small subset of quarterbacks that are one of these guys that are actually just like winning games for you from a, not only a fantasy stance, but from a DFS stance. And what you like to see is that we've got a very narrow target tree to pair Jalen Hurts, right? Mm-hmm. Like, always love that. It's basically been Arthur Juan and Devonta Smith. And it's been a lot of Devonta Smith these last 2 weeks too, you know, in terms of getting targets. It feels like his goose egg in week 1 was in another season at this point. Because he's come back and just absolutely smashed. I mean, who knew the first like wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy in 30 years is actually still a good football player, and we shouldn't write him off after week 1. And the other thing too is like Dallas Goedert, while been effective, just isn't earning a lot of targets. He's been targeted on just 13.8% of his routes. That's 23rd among all tight ends. So it's really been these 2 wide receivers, so the guys to kind of look at, Devonta Smith and Arthur Juan. So we'll see, you know, kind of how we want to approach things from a building stance, because it's really hard to play both these guys together in a stacking stance, because again, we're recording this on Thursday and like the value isn't fully materialized yet this week in terms of the real cheapies. We've got Richie James kind of on the board, but like this week's Mac Hollins hasn't come to fruition yet. So we'll keep an eye on that to see if we can fit in one of these guys in the lineups with a double maybe.
Yeah, there's a couple things here. So obviously 5,800 for Devonta Smith, even after that big explosion is interesting. Yeah, like no one really wanted to, I guess, acknowledge that this could be a 1A, 1B situation when they bring in AJ Brown, but definitely think that the prices show out that it's still pretty far apart. So we'll see who we can afford on this one. I think to your point about the quarterbacks, Reeves, it reminds me of a couple years ago when we started to see these Christian McCaffrey type of running backs like break that 10K barrier. It's almost like they had to continue to price them up until they weren't 30% owned, right? So maybe we do see that from some of these elite rushing quarterbacks at some point this year. Wouldn't be too surprising. And then really just paying all the way down hasn't really been that effective so far this year. But if that price gets a little bit more of like a gap between it, maybe we do see that. I'm curious your thoughts about if we're just going to stay on the Philly side. Miles Sanders was one that really stood out to me as someone that has been kind of like an early season winner. But what are your thoughts on Sanders so far this year, maybe in this game?
Yeah, Sanders in general, he's from a usage stance has been a winner because the Eagles just outright haven't trailed. Like we haven't, like they've gone through, and a big part of like being on the Eagles was looking at their schedule, and it's played out the way that we kind of thought it would be from a positive stance, and it's very light. So if you look at their schedule for the next several weeks, it's pretty amazing as well. And it's allowed him to have another 75% of the backfield touches. They just haven't trailed in any of these games, and he's that guy like in this offense. So maybe if they fall behind, we start to see more Kenneth Gainwell, but like this is a spot as 7-point home favorites. Like it's not implied. So you would think that he continues to get that kind of usage. Now the only hang up with Miles Sanders is he's not using the passing game at all I mean, 6 catches on the year, just 13 yards. It's followed a trend for his career. He's got significantly worse as a pass catcher in terms from a usage stance. And then he still has the 1 touchdown. And even last week, they got inside the 5, and Boston Scott came in. Now, they ran a play action pass, and it was all Jalen Hurts, but it's just another hurdle for Miles Sanders, right? Like, he's getting this usage in the game scripts we want, but because he doesn't catch passes and because he doesn't necessarily have as much touchdown equity as a guy in that early down rushing role would have, it's kind of been a bugaboo for fantasy. And it's not only not giving him a ceiling, it's not really giving him a floor in these games either. So it's kind of tough. The game script's going to be here for it, but does he get those catches? Does he get those touchdowns? That's kind of always the overarching rain cloud with Miles Sanders.
I'm with you on all those points, but per our official tools partner, Run the Sims, Miles Sanders more than 54.5 rushing yards, 63.7% favorite to win on PrizePicks. Maybe we don't care about the pass catching, the touchdowns, because if you want to kind of go that route, you can always get that in terms of your exposure for this game. So it remains the number one way to support the show, by the way, fam. If you do use that link in the description for PrizePicks and promo code Holka, get a free $100 bet. Would really appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit about the other side of this game. What's crazy is one of the more popular plays might end up being Evan Ingram at 3,400, which, I mean, that scares me in a million different ways. But what do we think about this passing game? Because it has been super effective so far, in particular Christian Kirk, which is, I guess, if we are taking victory laps, Christian Kirk, one of those guys that a lot of us were talking about all offseason.
Well, that's what makes this game interesting, is because what if the spread is still just way off? Like, what, it feels like we're still kind of inching of like, what are the Jaguars? How real are the Jaguars? And what if they had made a significant jump and this spread is just mispriced, right? I mean, they are number 1 in the NFL in red zone plays. They've scored on 48.5 possessions, the highest rate in the NFL. Not even like they're better. Like, they've gone from like bottom rung to being one of the better, like one of the best scoring offenses in the NFL through 3 weeks of the season. Again, some things ran out, but they did get over on the Colts and the Chargers, who like dealt with some things in those games for injury stands, but like they still aren't like pushover defenses, right? Like, it's not like he's out here doing this against the Seahawks and the Falcons. Totally. Trevor Lawrence is, but like Trevor Lawrence has made this just huge jump, and Doug Peterson and the offense has just been in completely different rhythm. And we knew last year with Urban Meyer, there was at least talent here. It's just now highlighted how bad of a job he was doing. But I'm very curious in this matchup here. This will solve a lot of problems, I think, for the Jaguars, answer a lot of questions that we have with the Jaguars right now. Because do we stock them as like an elite offense to sink our teeth into the rest of the season? If they can get over on the Eagles here, then yeah, I think we can. This is a huge litmus test. What has really helped Trevor Lawrence these past 2 weeks is he's gone against these real base cover 3 defenses, and the Gus Bradley and the Colts, and then last week Brandon Staley and the Chargers. He has faced cover 3 on 50% of his dropbacks the past 3 weeks, and against cover 3, Trevor Lawrence is 28 of 32 passing, 9.9 yards per pass attempt. Now, the Eagles have not really run any cover 3 this season. They basically living in this like Vic Fangio, cover 4, cover 6 system that Jonathan Gannon's been running. They've run that on 52% of their plays. And against those types of coverages, Trevor Lawrence has been significantly worse to start the year. He's only averaging 6.6 yards per pass attempt. He's 22nd in the NFL in yards per pass attempt against those coverages. He also has run out a bit of struggle in man coverage as well, 5.7 yards per attempt. And that makes inherent sense, because when you look at this Jaguars team, they've really done a good job from a coaching stance of coaxing out a lot of production from the Christian Kirks, the Zay Joneses, even Evan Ingram, going back to week 2. But what they still don't have is like that one alpha receiver, right? Like, they don't have that one guy that's like, all right, it's 3rd and 9, go win us a route type of guy. And so it makes sense that like some of the man coverage stuff and some of this like cover 4 concept stuff is like really kind of been like the area that they've had the most trouble kind of beating early in the season. But if they can get over here against the Eagles, I think that we'll be looking at the Jaguars in a totally different light moving forward. And I feel like a lot of people have one foot kind of moving in that direction as well. So there is upside here, because when you look at the pricing of these guys, everyone's still affordable. What's interesting is Zay Jones actually has more expected fantasy points than Christian Kirk on the season. Mm-hmm. So Christian Kirk's run a little bit hot. Obviously, he scored a touchdown in every game this season. That'll help you. That'll help you get there. And then the backfield has been kind of pretty interesting, because James Robinson has been this just amazing comeback story this season. He's getting long touchdown runs. He has 4 touchdowns. Only 1 is inside the 10-yard line so far. But also the other element here in play is that the Jaguars haven't trailed, right? They're seventh in the NFL in amount of snaps played trailing. So
Mhm.
we might see more Travis Etienne if eventually they start trailing, right? Like we haven't seen like his role in the offense
Possible.
really kind of manifest because they've just played ahead. The James Robinson role has been, everyone thought maybe we would see it against the Chargers. Never happened, right? Like they
Right.
led throughout the whole game. So maybe this week being 7-point road dogs, it's something that comes into play because the Eagles have been pretty good against the run since week one when they got beat up by the Lions running game. They've allowed just 3.2 yards per carry the past two games, the Minnesota and Washington running backs. So, if it's a situation where the Eagles are stopping the run better and they're up on the scoreboard, we could see Travis Etienne. A lot of people have left him for dead, but we start working with a very small sample in terms of what teams have faced from a game script stance. And I still think that there's going to be a situation here where Etienne is the passing down back and is a lot more involved if they're trailing.
Make sure you guys check out the worksheet over at sharpfootballanalysis.com if you want more on this game. But before we build a DraftKings lineup, I want to remind everyone to check out my free newsletter, The Touchdown Press, everything you need to stay up to date. And I guess if you want to keep up to date with the NFL in general, it's definitely one of those things you should take advantage of. Reeves, this game is, I'm struggling a little bit with pricing on the Philly side, but what do we want to do here? Do we want to see if we can make something work with Hurts?
I think we have to. I mean, I think we'll get cute with one of the lineups we end up building where we don't play one of these quarterbacks. But like these quarterbacks, they're just offering too high of upside.
Right, I'm with you. So, do we want to try and double Hurts? I guess how do you feel about the Hurts double? Because like you said, he's been kind of balling out as a passer the last couple weeks anyway. So maybe he is a guy that almost Lamar Jackson-esque where we're, I guess, hesitant to double him because it feels bad. But maybe we can with Hurts. What do you think?
Yeah, it is tough. I think pricing is going to be a problem, at least at this stage of the week. So maybe we start with Arthur Juan, and then if we need salary, we go down to Devonta Smith. Obviously Devonta Smith's coming off of the huge game, so he might be a little popular, but I don't think either of those guys are going to be too wildly owned though, so I don't think it's really a concern.
Yeah,
but we'll do Arthur Juan, and then let's put ETN in for the run out of that. Let's put him in here for a little salary.
I'm in on that. Is there, so on the cheaper side of defense, I don't like a lot this week.
It's rough.
I think that, even like Bears at 2,700, probably going to draw a decent amount of ownership, maybe Titans, but I think most people are probably going to try and get to like that 3,100 range for the Giants. So is there a defense that kind of stands out to you? That seems like, to me, what most people are going to do.
Yeah, no one's jumping out. I would say like last week where we were on the Panthers, and that one actually helped the week smooth out a little bit, was being on the Panthers. Bears are the one that stands out to me. Now, I typically like the home defense, but the Giants have been getting just absolutely wrecked in the up front, just like the Bears. So, I mean,
probably
I would say
Giants
in
this game.
What's that?
Or either. You probably play either defense in this game.
If Giants Bears, thankfully it's not a showdown slate, both defenses would probably be played for sure.
All right. Well, let's throw one of them in. Let's put
Bears because they're a little cheaper.
Cool.
And then we'll see. Right. We'll see what kind of salary we have. And then from there, I think we go with, let's run like a chalk mini here with Jamal Williams and Tyler Lockett.
Mm-hmm.
And that fills the running back spot. And then let's go cheap tight end. I don't think we need to do Ingram. We'll just go with Njoku for now.
Okay. I like that. 5,300 for a wide receiver and flex.
Yeah, let's do Cortland Sutton in the flex. And that should give us enough to do a double, almost a mini game on slot. We can do Zay Jones.
Ooh, okay.
So we'll get a little bit of piece of this game.